Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Well, let's jump into it.
Okay.
Well, Chuck, thanks for having me by your house, and thanks for being on the show.
Delighted to have you here. It's been looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I had it circled on the calendar ever since you called.
Yeah, I'm great to be out here on the farm, and you're the North Dakota State Troubadour. What's a troubadour?
Well, that's a good question. As far as I know, in the days of yore, the troubadours were traveled and sang, told stories, and learned stories of the population, but basically put life into song. And it was sort of a documentarian effort, I believe.
Yeah,
I could be totally wrong on that, but that's what I've gathered.
I mean, it's really talks about what you do, because there is so much in listening to a couple of your albums in terms of you're documenting, you're telling a story in a way that, it's not, they don't seem to be, 3-minute love ditties. I mean, there's a couple in there.
there's a couple, yeah. But yeah, in general, it's not the commercial effort.
Yeah.
That is not the
right.
The impetus. So it's to tell the story of the heart, my neighbors' hearts, just people that come across, or just historical events that have a certain, I think, need to be remembered, or worthiness to be remembered.
Right.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, what are some of the, I guess, personal stories, but then also stories of North Dakota that you feel like, for you, really encapsulate the work that you do?
Well, the primary one that always comes to mind is the story of, or ballad of Hazel Minor, who was a young woman who lived she was going to be 16 in the middle of March in 1920. And she lived about 100, I think it's about 70 miles northwest of here near Center, North Dakota. And she was at her country school, and there was sort of some forewarning of a blizzard coming. And I don't know how that happened in 1920.
No National Weather Service.
No national, no nothing. Anyway, riders were sent to the schools to tell the kids to get home, to their homes. And so she hitched up, and she had arrived at school with her little brother and sister on a sleigh pulled by a horse. So she takes off heading home, and the blizzard hits, and she gets lost, and they end up just out on the prairie in this horrible, horrible storm. And in brave desperation, she has her siblings lie down, and then she opens her coat and lies down on top of them.
Wow.
And they survive. She does not.
Wow.
And I think that when I go into schools and I share this story with young people, I mean, they just get big-eyed and real quiet. And the searchers who found them the next day, the horse was still standing with its eyes and nose frozen closed with impacted wet snow. And that quiets a classroom.
And the horse survived?
It survived.
It did.
Yeah. And but what that tells me, and what I like to share with young people, is that, inevitably we encounter storms of life where we probably don't know what to do.
Yeah.
At least I have. What am I going to do? What am I supposed to do now? Well, Hazel did the best that she could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that sort of emulates what I like to think is the spirit of prairie folks, that we do the best we can.
Yeah.
And not necessarily self-sacrifice, but giving, self-giving
Yeah.
anyway. So, and yeah, it's so that's one. That was one of the first songs that I actually ever really worked at writing, and it actually got me some of the most notoriety at the time.
Right. Reminds me of Appalachian ballads.
Yeah.
Very, very similar to that. And those are not generally musical accompaniment. It's just spoken.
Oh,
Or
okay.
I guess I shouldn't say spoken word, but a sung story. But yours has a musical accompaniment.
Well, if I may just sort of tack on the corollary, or if that's the right word, I was did a lot of research at the state archives about that event, and it was just what you just described. It was a long, sad story. And I told my wife, Linda, I said, I really need another blizzard to sort of recalibrate here. But it was early April, and this was in the 80s, early 1980s. Anyway, so I was out feeding. We got hit by a 3-day blizzard on April 22nd.
Wow.
And just one of those where it's just horizontally blowing snow and horrific winds. And so I was out feeding cattle by hand with carrying small bales. And I leaned up against the haystack in a little quiet alcove to just catch my breath. And the storm was raging out, but it was quiet where I was. And I looked out, and there was a mourning dove lying face down on the snow, wings outstretched, dead. And I knew I had been given what I'd been waiting for, and pulled out my notepad that I carry in my coveralls and wrote down the words that started rising up. Wings on snow, a fate not chose. Morning finds this dove so froze, who too soon thought spring arrived. In warmth below, love survived.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think humans could probably feel that same way with an April 22nd blizzard. Wow. I mean, that's an inspiration for a story. It sure is. Do you consider yourself a poet first or a musician first?
Oh, I really don't know. People ask that a lot. Can your lyrics stand alone as poetry? Some can, I think.
Yeah.
Some can't. Some need the music to instill the feeling. But so I really don't know the answer to that. It's kind of a multifaceted thing. I was just hired recently to play on an album, another musician's project. And I told him, I said, I'm not an LA studio musician. I mean, it's evolved. What I do is just sort of evolved over the years on my own here on the farm and in performance. But it's just one of the facets of, I don't even know what the word is, what I try to share with people.
Yeah. I heard a quote that, well, I guess you had quoted, the poet has a special responsibility as society's seer.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
That is a quote from the writer David Brooks, columnist and commentator. Yeah. A dear friend of mine, shared that with me or made me aware of it. And it just grabs me. And I recite it to myself all the time, almost daily. The poet has special responsibility as society's seer, one who grasps the eternity in the present and speaks to others of their own divine voice within.
And I think I've read recently that it's hard to convince people through argument, through conversation, but you can through telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you feel that your music can convince or conveying a point or an opinion through a story can change minds differently than just hashing it out over conversation?
Well, a couple things come to mind. I've tried to never um, politicize my music. And that means I think that it is beyond, and this sounds really haughty, but I think that art, since sincere, true art, uh, is in a way, in a sense, beyond politics,
Yeah.
that reaches into other portals of people's consciousness that they may not even be aware of. And this truly has happened to me many times after a performance, particularly in maybe small communities, rural communities. Afterwards, there'll be people lining up to just, someone will be want to tell me their grandpa's story.
Right, yeah,
Which
yeah.
is one that they didn't probably know they had one before.
Yeah,
And I think that's what Brooks is alluding to,
yeah.
their own divine voice within. And then inevitably, there will be like a, an older farmer, and he'll just say, stand in front of me, and they'll start crying
Wow.
because something was touched inside him he didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
And again, I don't mean this as, heroic on my part or anything like that, or egoic.
Yeah.
It's just the beauty of art and what it can, the power that it does have. So yes, I think it can influence, decision making or reevaluating someone's life outlook.
Yeah. My approach to music has always been, I don't listen to music to laugh. I do lots of other things to laugh, like have these sort of conversations, but I listen to music, one, because it brings me joy. It also is evocative. It brings back memories, whether it be in the lyrics themselves or listening to a song that brings back a time when I listened to that song frequently. Is that similar for you?
Yeah, well, it is. I see. I grew up here where we are. This is my childhood bedroom was right behind you over there. And this is where I grew up, and I had elderly parents. I was a late child. My mom was, I think, 41 when I was.
Oh, wow.
And I was also, and I don't know if this was by choice or if I was a whoops baby. But there was 7 years between myself and my next sibling. I have 3 older sisters, but there's a 7-year spread between myself and my youngest sister.
Wow.
So essentially, I was the only boy. So I was the last hope for a boy on a North Dakota farm.
Right.
Or as my sister says, the golden child.
Well, of course, between siblings, that's always the case.
Or the Messiah.
Oh, that's even better, Dig. I like that. She's good.
So anyway, I was out here alone, and I did take on that responsibility. If I can say that for my own self.
Of course you can. It's a huge responsibility.
But it was lonely, and at times I thought the farm was a prison, and poor me, and all of that. Later and now, I realize what a gift it was in terms of a monastic sort of experience, and it gave me a chance to hear those voices within, and that Brooks speaks of, the divine voice within, that we all have, I believe.
I think so too.
Yeah. And so I feel that I was fortunate in having that. And so the music came, and I don't know, music was part of the household in a sense. It wasn't a nerdy thing or anything like that. My mom played and taught some piano, and my dad really, he did play some violin, although I never really heard him play. But music was upheld as a part of our life and community, and my dad, he really liked different bands that would come play at the Bohemian Fraternal Lodge, the Bohemian Hall,
Yeah.
and most of those were accordion based. So the music part rose somehow just innately, I guess that might be the word.
Yeah.
And just never went away. Even when I, got in early marriage and just sort of overwhelmed with the farm responsibilities and marriage and then kids and everything. And in the midst of all of that, the music still spoke.
Right.
And I was able to listen.
Yeah. So what's maybe you could just talk through like your day on the farm at that point in your life, and what all your responsibilities and
At that point,
yeah.
oh, well, we always had old machinery, so there was always fixing and mechanical stuff and things breaking down. So that was a big part of it, but it was mostly just up early when I'm not an early riser.
Yeah.
And well, I'm thinking more in terms of before I started getting out performing much. I'm just thinking of maybe my high school and early college years, that it was up early, get out in the field, and then it was on and on and on and on in the field, back and forth, back and forth. And I sometimes joke in my concerts, I say, like, okay, this song was written in the key of third gear on a McCormick Deering 2236, pulling 316 bottom plow with packer and pony drill. And in a sense, that is true. That there again, I think Brooks is right. There is a eternity in the present that we aren't always aware of. And so, yeah, just the drone of the tractor became part of. See, look, I'm even starting to sway like the tractor's going.
I mean, it is a bit of an eternity in the present, in that every day is, you've got a head of cattle, you've got 1,000 acres, and it is a routine, and every day you're milking and feeding. And
I didn't get in on much of the milking. I was a little kid then, but I did get in on with our beef herd. Calving season is a real intense, in a way, intense time, especially when we were trying to calve early, like in early March, and it was bad weather, and we didn't have facilities, so we'd have to check the animals every 2 hours for a month and a half, and even that, though, when you get up when most people aren't up and walk around with these animals and these mama cows that know something important is about to happen.
Yeah.
And then it happens. And it's a real special, sacred time. And so I feel lucky that I had that opportunity to
Yeah.
experience that.
Yeah.
And um, and at, at the same time, there, I felt anguish while it was happening too, because I thought, oh man, I could be someplace else if it wasn't for this need
Yeah.
for me to be here.
Yeah. And tell me about the farm today, and does it still influence your music?
Well, it does, in that we made it this far. And so I feel like I fulfilled that obligation and beyond,
Oh
actually.
yeah. Yeah. It's been
You know,
what,
and
50?
so now it's more a matter of listening to the land in terms of without listening to it with the idea of exploiting it and just letting it be to as much as I can, so balance out some sort of way of getting income and without being brutal to the land.
Right.
And so it's more now an expansive type of listening. It isn't all about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just what should be done. And also just with all the I got to be careful here because all the wrongs that are being done to the planet, even this little space, even what we call Molly's Field out here, it's I mean we've learned that there are a lot of songbirds that nest there. So we've changed our haying system we cut hay way later than we used
Oh wow.
to allow those songbirds opportunity to nest
Yeah.
and fledge their young. And so that's, and then we also we raised the cutter bar up to about 8 or 10 inches rather than scalping along the ground trying to get every green leaf into our bank account.
Sure.
And there again, that sounds real self.
Well, it's the exact opposite. I would argue that you're looking out for the natural world.
Well, we are, but I mean, I got to be careful because it can sound like, "Oh, see what a good boy I am."
We'll give you a pat on the shoulder.
Yeah. So that's kind of the difference, And I had to struggle with answering you right now because I really hadn't had to put it into that context of an encapsulated statement before.
Yeah.
It's just evolved, and so it's a transition state, and I'm 77 now, and one of the words that keeps popping up in my head and heart is transformation. And I really have come to realize that this is a transformative journey that we're all on. But the scale tips at some point to where it really is transformative. And that means letting go also of things or realizing that things that I once believed totally maybe aren't true and maybe weren't true even then, but it was just the means of survival. And the way we thought it was supposed to be, or I thought it was supposed to be.
Right.
So, and that's changed the outlook on the farm here as well.
And what are you thinking now? What's your outlook? You were talking about possibly renting out some of the pasture land.
Yeah, we'll probably keep it in pasture land. But see, even the idea of raising, I mean, okay, is beef and grain the only way we could think of to use this land?
Sure.
I mean, there's got to be more.
Of course. Yeah.
And so I at least I think. And also, I became aware of what happened to our calves when we would sell them in the fall. And it was a heartbreak to sell them, and yet it was exciting. And we'd take them to the local livestock auction and watch them sell. And sometimes the price was great, sometimes not so great. And then that was it. I never really thought beyond that point what happened to those animals.
Right.
And over the last few years, I've become aware of that. And I don't find that I'm very comfortable with that. So in terms of like using this land now for beef production, ideally, and we thought we were going to do this, and we actually did it for a while on a very small niche marketing, local market. We raise the animals not in a feedlot, but they would be out on grass. And then even in the winter, we would have them out in a protected area, but they'd be at large. And then finish them on grass, and then they would be harvested here on the farm.
Oh, wow.
So 1 minute, and there was a butcher shop in town that did this. They would come out, dispatch the animal. So painful as that was to watch, that was part of the deal. So that was part of the, I suppose, the eternity in the present, that these animals die. And how they die is just as important to me now as how they lived. And so the butcher would come out, and we'd have a small pen, and the animal would be eating hay, calm, most of the time. And if his shot was true, that was it.
Yeah.
And then, so there are no fear hormones in the meat, and I thought, well, this is so right. This is so. If we're going to do this, if we're going to raise animals for meat, this is the ultimate correct way.
Yeah.
Well, it just didn't pan out. We ended up not being able to find, when this butcher went retired or whatever happened, not sure. We weren't able to find another butcher shop that would do that. Oh. So, and it just seems so appropriate. I read a book and actually ended up meeting Dan O'Brien down, he lives near Rapid City, and he's an author. And he had a book called Buffalo for the Broken Heart about converting his ranch to buffalo. And then they were able to legally harvest their buffalo out on the prairie. And so he's got a couple of skilled marksmen. And in his book, he talks about seeing the first blood from one of the first kills soak into the prairie after they had shot it. Bled it out, and seeing the blood quench the source that it had come from.
Yeah.
And how appropriate that seemed to him. And it seemed to me as well. So I would like that, but I don't, that's the flaw. The end game is flawed, in my humble opinion.
You said you've had this shift in the past couple of years. What brought on that shift in your thinking?
In my thinking?
Yeah.
Are you asking in terms of the farm? Or
yeah.
Well, I think it was a gift. I don't know if it's anything I did, but I just became aware more of things, and also just not comfortable with the competition and the ego-based, the egoic way of things. And I had bought a van. It was my first really kind of nice van. It was a Chrysler Town and Country. I bought it used when I was traveling more with the music, and it had had satellite radio already installed, and so I was able to listen to some programming that I had not previously been aware of. But one night I was driving at home after a gig, and I was listening to this conversation with a choreographer from Hollywood who was a major influence, and I don't remember his name, I'm sorry to say. But in the interview, he said that one of his proudest aspects of his legacy was that he choreographed John Wayne's sort of sideways swagger.
Yeah.
That it was choreographed.
I did not know that.
By a ballet instructor.
Wow.
and that just stuck into me, and I thought, holy smokes. I mean, myself included, and how many other of my quote unquote cowboy neighbors, and just the whole mentality of that it was based on choreography.
It was literally choreographed. Yeah.
The Duke, man.
So you pulled away the curtain. And
So I don't know, it's just little things like that eventually sort of opened doors for me. And they still are, and I'm still searching desperately. And also I became aware of the writings and teachings of a Franciscan priest, Father Richard Rohr. And I'm very influenced by that. Also, quite frankly, I got involved with Al-Anon, and that is teaching me much about finding the true self.
And that's for Al-Anon is for friends and family.
Friends and family.
Okay.
Yeah. And so all of those have contributed to this what I call a transformative time of life.
Yeah.
And I hope I have some left.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about, or a little bit about, the prairie, and I was thinking of, having driven out here, and, as I said, we were in Nebraska and Wyoming and South Dakota, Montana, and now into North Dakota, and, I've traveled all across the country, and I recently had a guest on, Laura Jackson, who's a great writer from West Virginia, and spent some time in West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and the landscape could not be any different than being here. And that when you're in Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, you're surrounded by hills and you cannot see a quarter mile in any direction. And so I asked her about that, and she said that it brought a sense of comfort to her, and she thinks to her fellow West Virginians, in that you're almost enveloped by these mountains that make you feel like you've got pillows surrounding you. Whereas on the prairie, it's the exact opposite, that it is, flat and maybe some rolling hills. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever just thought about how that the big sky country concept, and how that may inflect maybe your music or life or just people in general out here?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've thought about that a lot. And subconsciously, probably more than I realize. But what you just described reminded me of, I finished school at North Dakota State University in the Red River Valley, where it was flat as a tabletop for miles and miles and miles. And I had never really been away from home before. And so on my first trip back here, the interstate highway, as it comes down to the Missouri River on the east side, it's like a cut they had to make in the bluffs. So you drive down in, and I remember coming back that first time and just feeling like I was being cradled in the arms of the hills.
Yeah.
And it was just so comforting.
Yeah.
And yet, compared to the terrain that you just described, even where we live here, it's pretty wide open. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I was asked one time about this, and one of the aspects of the prairie, I find it just, I mean, I do, not so much as I used to, but there's an eroticism to it. It's a real sensual place.
How so?
It just, I don't know. Well, or maybe it's just the closeness because I grew up here, but it's, being able to see the stars, although we've got some light pollution issues now that I didn't have when I was a kid. I used to be out every night in winter till about 10:30 with my sled and my dog, and just it was the smell of the air, the stars, or all of that. So, and even this morning, I was walking. I tend some of my daughter's horses. So I was walking out to them, and I just got this, I smelled this perfume, and it was just beautiful, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I thought maybe, I don't know, I thought maybe my neighbors had come up with a new benevolent crop spray or something. You know? But then on the way back, I walked through that again, and then I realized it was from a Russian olive tree nearby that was in full blossom. And it was just, I mean, I just was intoxicated. I just stood there and inhaled for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I did inhale. Not that.
So what makes North Dakota special?
Oh, well. My former answer to that was that, and I'm guilty of this myself, I grew up feeling so insecure about being from North Dakota.
Really?
And then so but then, and I don't know if this just came about, this idea, I thought, well, I viewed a few things that I thought that, yeah, North Dakota is, at least it used to be, was so far behind the rest of the country that it was actually ahead. And that it allowed, we had a chance to see sort of quote unquote progress and its legacy in other areas, mining or whatever you wanted, economic development. And North Dakota always, to me, has had this sort of safety, this margin of safety around it, because either people, the old joke, 20 below keeps the riffraff out. That's not so true anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of those aspects of that gave us this margin of safety, I think, have dissipated or been quote unquote overcome somehow. But so that's what used to make it special for me. I still think that it has that, but I worry. We just passed a law allowing confined animal feeding operations on 40-acre sites. And when I first started traveling with the music, I was in my mid to late 30s before I really got out of here and ever traveled anywhere. But it was the music that got me on the road and to other places. But I was traveling, in the southern Minnesota corner, southwestern Minnesota corner down in there in Iowa. And there's just a lot of intense animal agriculture there. And that they were ahead of us in that sense, quote unquote, ahead of us.
Yeah.
But I remember driving home late one night and this just horrific odor. It was just, I couldn't believe it. And I actually got a headache and I realized it was that its source was, I don't know if it was turkeys or hogs or cattle. I don't know. And I remember finally getting to, I think it was Murdo, South Dakota, or right where the Missouri crosses I-90. And it was way late at night. And I rolled down the window and it was just this sweet, sweet, clean prairie air.
Yeah.
And I actually did this when I finally got near the farm. And this, again, sounds really, I don't know, selfie. But I got out and I knelt down and I offered thanks that I lived where I lived, where that was not.
Yeah.
And now it's coming. And also, I think the way the law reads, and they call them, was it an acronym?
CAFOs.
CAFOs, which I think, I mean, now if I was a lobbyist, I would use that. It's like a cappuccino drink, you know. I'll have a CAFOs with a. Can't be bad. So, I worry. That's part of my worry.
How else do you think the state has changed in the last 75 years?
How has it changed? Well, I think it's lost some of that. I don't think it's as down home country as it wants to think it is. And so I think it is prey to forces that don't care about it as much as people who used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and I wrote a lot of nice songs sitting out on the tractor, open tractor, smelling the fresh turned earth.
Yeah.
And, you know, seeing the dawn and seeing the sunset and seeing the moon rise over the hill. But I was probably disturbing the earth in an improper way, you know. And so there are some aspects of industrial, if you want to call it that, modern agriculture that probably are better in terms of soil erosion and things like that. But it involves a lot of chemical intervention. Wendell Berry, the writer from Kentucky, I think this is his line. He said, "There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places." Well, I want to be on the side of sacred places.
Yeah.
So I'm with the Dick Sissels and the red-tail hawks.
Right.
And the ants. Okay, here's what my neighbors that we were renting pasture to. He said, "Well, what are all those stakes out there? There's these stakes with white flags on them." I said, "Well, that's the ant hills." And he said, "The ant hills." I said, I don't want to plow. I said, have plowed into ant hills. They're kind of a mound.
Yeah.
And, but there's a lot going on like 10 feet down under that mound. And I said, the first time I plowed into one of those mounds, it just made me sick when I went back and looked at what I had done.
Wow.
And the chaos and the terror. And I said, so whenever I see a mound, I put a stake by it. So we go around and please, you as well. And he kind of, I think I saw an eye roll, but he walks away a different person to some degree. I hope, I think.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, you know how many ants are there? I said, well, I said, I want those ants on my side. So I think I got off track from your question there.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's I still to just go out and walk the pastures, and it grounds me very much. No pun intended. I mean, it's just there's a lot that is still very right, and I want to protect that.
Yeah. So this is your second stint as the North Dakota State Troubadour. You had said that you had done you were the troubadour during the centennial year.
I was the centennial troubadour.
Centennial troubadour. Forgive me. Sorry.
Well, see, South Dakota had one. He was a guy, Kyle Evans, had a real deep Johnny Cash kind of voice and popular in the region. And so I don't know how it came to be that he was nominated the South Dakota Centennial Troubadour. Well, North Dakota wasn't going to let that slip by. And I don't know how my name got in the ring at all. I don't.
Yeah. But you played, you said, all over the state?
Well, yeah, at the time, yeah. I was starting to play out more then regionally. So we did. And we had the kids at the time. Linda's very musical and taught the kids piano. And so we sort of had the Von Suchy troupe in addition to my solo stuff. So we did a lot of county fairs.
Wow.
It was exciting and fun. And then at the same time, there were times where the kids didn't want to get in the Suburban.
Right.
Can't we just stay home this weekend?
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, yeah. And then this second round, I mean, I always thought that like the Centennial Troubadour thing, once that year was over, that it would be over, but it somehow stuck, and for better or worse, I'm not sure. Mostly for better, but and then I don't know. I'm really not quite sure how this second one came about, but I know it involved. It wasn't something I went after. Let me. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. You didn't nominate yourself.
I did not. I did not go lobby legislators or.
But it's important not only for yourself but also for music and arts education in the state.
And thank you for acknowledging that, because I was pretty ambivalent about it. A few years ago, it had come up and it had been. X'd off.
Oh.
And it just totally involved partisan politics.
Mm-hmm.
Although my own never came up, was not known, but it was the people who had sponsored it at the time were not in good favor with the people in power. And it was just, anyway, so then the second time came around and I was really ambivalent, but then I thought, okay, this is music and it's being talked about by the state legislature.
Yeah.
And this is probably going to, and I don't know if it will, I hope it does, gets me a chance to get into some schools and which I really like to do. I like to get in and reveal a crazy 77-year-old to grade school and high schoolers. And just, again, like the guy with the ants, the neighbor with the ants in his head after having a conversation with me. The kids are walking off and they're going, hey, maybe me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm hearing something. Or maybe the stuff that I'm hearing doesn't mean I'm crazy.
Right.
Maybe it means I'm being given a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I have an obligation even to do something with this, or to find joy, or to realize the joy in this.
Yeah.
Because we need joy. And
we sure do.
Yeah. So that was part of my reason for accepting it. And it's not a matter of achievement or anything like it's a matter of engagement, I think. And I did a high school, I think that's about 2 years ago now. And I have a song about a young guy that I gave a ride to when I was making one of my first trips from the grain elevator back out to the combine where my dad was waiting. And I don't know, I had driven by several of these figures before because that's all they seem to be, walking along the highway. And but this one day, for whatever reason, that little voice inside and caused me to slow down and open the door, and he climbed in. And it was just quiet for a long time, and I was pretty nervous. But then he spoke, and he said, "Yeah, I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow. Yeah, I'm a singer, And I didn't know at the time what he was telling me, but later I learned that he was a prominent singer with the local tribe on his way to a powwow, perhaps.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I did learn from a real prominent hoop dancer, Kevin Lakota, who's recently passed away. And I told him that story, and he said, "Well, Chuck, these guys are like rock stars in our culture."
Oh, wow.
He probably wanted you to know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sang that song and told that story at a high school in the eastern part of the state a couple of years ago. And then when I was done, I was packing up my gear out on the gymnasium floor. And all of a sudden I looked up and there's these 3 young men, well, soon to be men, just standing, staring at me. And they said, "Can we help you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you can help me carry out." And so they wanted to know about Kenny Rainbow more. And then on the last trip in, I thanked them, and they went walking down the hall. And they started singing the chorus to the song.
Oh, wow.
I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow. I'm a singer, And I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the stuff. This is the stuff.
Because I guess as the troubadour, you're not only an ambassador for the state of North Dakota, you're an ambassador for music.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah. We've had music programs cut in elementary schools in Bismarck this year.
Wow.
And at least so I've been told. And I don't know. I was lucky. I had my folks got me accordion lessons when I was in the second grade. Um, we'd go to town on Saturday and take cream and eggs in, and I get my accordion lesson and a candy bar.
Wow. So you bartered for your music.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I don't know about that, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then high school, got into, well, I was 26 chair trumpet out of 26 chairs.
Okay.
But I was there, it was good.
Yeah.
And then guitar came around, I don't know, when I was in a junior and senior, when accordion was not
the hippest instrument.
The hippest instrument. I like to say it was tough being a farm kid at Mandan Junior High, but a farm kid who played accordion was way beyond the reach of the cool gang.
And you played accordion on a lot of your tracks.
Yeah. I rediscovered it. See, that's that little seed that was planted, or maybe it was always there. Even when I quit playing in ninth or high school, quit playing for quite a long time, till late 20s or into my 30s, and then it was like, come on, you love this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really lucky that my parents cared enough about that, and that I had the opportunity. I had a really good accordion teacher when I was a guy that Wally Mackey was his name, and he played locally and regionally, and then he taught, endured some really bad accordion.
Yeah, it's one of those instruments where when you're bad, you're bad. Bagpipes are up there. So besides the accordion, what other instruments do you play?
A little bit of piano, but not much. Accordion, guitar, that's pretty much it.
There's a lot of mandolin on a number of your tracks.
Yeah. That's not me.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, that was Peter Ostrushko, and he's one of the premier mandolinists he's world renowned, or he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, if you're familiar with Garrison Keillor's Prairie Home Companion, Peter was the music director for many years on that show, and it was by good grace that he came into my life. And it was just one of those things. When I say the music never went away, and just even though I was, when I graduated from college and married, and just to play and to buy groceries, I played motel lounges, which was, on one hand, it was practice and
Right.
and a paycheck.
Yeah.
And be playing. Fortunately enough, there were a couple of places that hired me quite regularly here, so I was able to play a lot. But that, in fitting in with the farm, it was, like, especially during cattle, when we were artificially inseminating our our cows. Linda would bring the cows that needed servicing in on the evening while I was gone and leave me a note, and then I'd come home, and then I'd breed them the next morning when they were scheduled to, and check, and then try and get some sleep.
Right. So you're playing a motel lounge till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and
often a couple of times I got home, and when I woke up in the morning, my clothes were hanging out in the apple tree because Linda couldn't stand how they smelled.
Oh, the cigarette smoke.
Cigarette smoke.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, and I'd sit in that motel lounge, just always telling myself, anybody could walk through that door. And after several years, one night, a woman did walk through the door. Rosalie Goldstein, who was on the board of the Winnipeg Folk Festival, board of directors. And a friend of mine had found out she was in town and convinced her to come up and listen, and she and a friend came up, and it was one of those real smoky, noisy nights because the motel lounge was a legislative hangout, and so there were all these lobbyists and legislators and cigarettes and booze, and it was just mayhem. And she made her way to the stage, and she said, "Do you do any original stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, but no one's going to listen." She said, "I'll listen." I played her a couple songs, and she just smiled and said, "Oh my." And to make a long story short, next thing I knew, I was on a plane to Winnipeg, and for sort of an introductory house concert attended by the founder and producer, Mitch Podolak. And then the next thing I knew, I was on stage at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. And then approached by about 4 different independent record labels. And that's how I met Peter Ostrishko, who I knew of, but I didn't know, and we became soul brothers.
Oh, wow.
But he passed away, I think 2 years ago now from stroke complications. And I listen to that music now, and I just, what a lucky guy.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about him?
About Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, he grew up in Northeast Minneapolis, Ukrainian, and his dad played some music, and Peter carried on, and just brilliant musician, and sort of started off like all of us, playing by ear, I think, and then later became a complete musician's musician, learned to chart and read and transcribe, but his talent was just, and what I initially saw him on a television show that was produced by Minnesota Public Broadcasting, and I just, even over the television, there was something in his music that touched me deeply that was almost beyond music. And it was soul of a different, it bonded.
Yeah.
It clicked with me, and it did with many other people. He has just marvelous touch. And so he went on he played on my first album, and then I said, "What would you think about producing another one, or producing the second one?" And he agreed, and it really went well, and we just went on from there. But he was far beyond. I could never play with Peter. I mean, I could to some degree, but it was always he was playing with me. Maybe.
Wow.
And he graciously, I gave him stuff to work with that he probably wouldn't have gotten elsewhere. I'll say that for myself.
Okay.
but not necessarily technically musical.
Yeah.
And well, I remember reading a magazine article. Jethro Burns, are you familiar with
Same sounds.
Homer? They used to, back in the 50s, there was a duo called Homer and Jethro. They had kind of a comedy hillbilly thing, and they were both sort of put on this hillbilly front stage persona, but they were both incredibly brilliant musicians. I think especially Jethro, who played mandolin. So I remember reading this article in Songwriter magazine, and Jethro's on one of his, I think, many deathbeds, but he was being interviewed. He granted one interview, and they asked him, "Who's the best mandolin player?" And he said, "Well, I won't name a best, but he said, I'll give you my top 5." And he listed Peter as one of those in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
And he said, but don't ask Peter Ostrushko for his autograph because he can't spell his name. Yeah. And I mean, it just brings me to tears, my good fortune with all of this.
Yeah.
And Peter's probably the pinnacle. I mean, I know I appreciated it at the time. I did that, but now it's just way more precious.
Yeah. It's almost like the old concept, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry.
Yeah. 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 It's, and, I don't know, the unlikeliness of all of that to me is just quite amazing and makes me have even deeper belief and faith in goodness and joy and love.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about, you'd written a song and you used the phrase hometown love.
Yeah.
And it was talking about LA and hometown love.
Yeah.
And could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. See, that's back to that North Dakota or lack of self-esteem kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my mom she had, I think, was it 3 sisters. She had 3 sisters, and they all left for the West Coast. But my mom had to stay on the farm because she was the oldest.
Wow.
And there again, that responsibility. And she always kind of, I don't know, lamented that. And I remember when those aunts started coming back after they had established their lives on the West Coast in Oregon and California, Los Angeles. And they started making trips back every fall, usually around harvest time. And Mom would always just, God, we got to clean the house. We got to scrub the paint off the walls because my sisters are coming from California.
The prodigal daughters. Yeah.
And so that just kind of threw fuel on the fire for me. Like, oh man, we really are backwards here or something. And so hometown love, that's my little way of dealing with that. Kind of jabbing that idea that we're backwards here. And so it's trying to uplift the esteem of this young dad living this ordinary life. And he's not in LA, but he's got hometown love.
Yeah. Which is the exact opposite, I think, of, the anonymity of living in a big city. And
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
What would you say to young people that, yeah, they're whether they're high school graduates or graduating college and they're contemplating their next move? What would you say to them?
In general?
Yeah, in terms of, do they stay in the state and
Oh, I don't know. It's such a, just this whole digital revolution and paradigm shift is where you can kind of, in a sense, be anywhere in the world, from anywhere in the world. I think, if it still works. I don't know.
when it works?
Yeah, if you got good service. I don't know. Okay, here's what when I go into schools, I really encourage young people to find a quiet place, at least every day if they can, and really learn to listen to that voice, to their heart, to their truth, to try and find their true self, whatever that is, and not put too much stake in what others are trying to tell them they want them to be.
Right.
So whatever that means, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of in answer to your question right now, is to find a quiet place within yourself, or maybe out sit beside a haystack for a while.
Yeah. Anything you want to leave us with? Final thoughts?
Well, that final thoughts
for this podcast.
Terminal entrance. Oh, I am. I came across this. I lost my journals. I had 2 journals, and I carried them with me, and I left them in a motel or something.
No.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
But I know, and I came upon an entry that I was going to put in the journal, because a lot of times I would just scratch down ideas on receipts or whatever. And Linda, my wife Linda, learned to really carefully go through my pockets if she was doing the laundry.
Yeah.
Because it might not just be waste paper. It might have something. But I came upon this line. It said, "The child raised with hope faces the possibility of failure, and the child raised without hope faces the inevitability of failure."
Wow.
Now, I don't know if that's true, but to have hope and to be open to joy and to be grateful. And I am just so grateful.
Yeah. You have a lot to be grateful for. And yeah. I'm grateful for having me by the farm.
Hey, thank you.
Well, how can people find out more about you? And
well, here we go. Yeah, there's a Star Trek episode where the Enterprise is wounded or decommissioned somehow by I don't know who, the bad guys out in space. And on TV, it shows it in this sort of listing position, but there is no level in space.
Right.
So they show the Enterprise kind of just sideways floating out there. That's my website. That's how my website is. Yeah. I've sort of lost, I don't know what happened. things went awry. So I don't necessarily have a website. So I don't know how to do that. Maybe on Facebook this is that whole new paradigm that I know.
And you did just release an EP?
I did release an EP, so that's available on all these
streaming services.
Thank you. Streaming services. See, I don't even know how to speak the language. And so there's that. Probably on Facebook you can find me somehow.
Yeah. And
or just I know there's a lot of YouTube stuff too. I don't know how much has contact information, but
and you're performing regularly all over the state, I presume.
Well, it's picked up a bit. COVID really was a factor, and I used to do these. I had I call them tours. My total musician friends would not call them tours, but I had these trips. One out to Montana that I did every fall, and then one through Minnesota and a little bit of Iowa. And then there were the festivals that I did all over the place. So that, and COVID kind of just shut all that down. And then 2 years later, or whatever it was, some of those venues didn't exist. And I was 2 years older, and it was a lot more difficult for me to fuel up.
Right.
But if we get this farm thing straightened out, I hope to do more.
That's great.
And then I've also got some issues with my hands, carpal tunnel and arthritis, but I've learned some yoga techniques that are really helping me. So I'm not totally giving up on it. And the phone still rings.
Great.
That's great. Very great.
And hey, get the letters come in the mail as mine did. So, so that's another way of reaching out, I guess.
It is. It is. Thank you.
Well, Chuck, thanks for having me by the farm, and thanks for being on the show.
This has been great. Thank you so much, Mark.
All Across America is produced by me, Marco Vig, in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Visit us on Instagram at All Across America. Check out our website, allacrossamerica.com. There's an interactive map with all our episodes, and there's a Contact Us page where you can send your reactions, guest ideas, and suggestions. So get in touch, stay connected. To me, that's what podcasting is all about. Thanks for listening.